Welcome to the Spark Good podcast, your weekly dose of inspiration, strategies, and stories that will ignite your passion for making a difference through your business. I'm your host, Stephanie Malon-Rufi, and together we will dive into the world of entrepreneurship and small business and explore how we can harness its power to spark good and change how we do business. I believe in the incredible potential that business can have in making a positive social impact, and I want to help you discover how you can better align your business goals with meaningful causes and contribute to a better world. Plus, you'll learn how to nurture your own well-being, change traditional rules that might be holding you back, and thrive in your role as a social business owner. All right, let's dive in. Hello, and thank you again for joining me on the Spark Good podcast. I am your host, Stephanie Malon-Rufi, and today I'm going to be talking about the first step that you should take when you are strategically planning in your business for the new year. So if you're listening to this in real time, we're in the middle of November of 2023, and many of us are starting to think about 2024 and doing that annual planning. Now, if you've listened to some of my more recent episodes, you'll know that strategic annual planning is a topic that I am really getting into in some of these episodes and breaking apart and hopefully giving you some ideas and inspiration for your own planning. And today I'm sharing with you that what is that first crucial step that you should take when you're looking at 2024. And the spoiler on that is it is not setting a revenue goal. That is actually not the first step that I recommend you taking. And the first step that I recommend you take, and I will also say, is an exercise that I have available for people. So I'll talk more about this at the end, but I have a live virtual workshop to help you strategically plan your 2024. And for people who sign up, you can go ahead and register right now because I have several exercises that I recommend you doing before we dive into doing that, kind of that really meaty planning. And I have some short videos and a workbook for you to use to do a little bit of pre-work before you really sit down to plan your 2024. And what I'm going to talk through today is actually one of those exercises, for which I do have a video as well to talk through it. But I thought people might be interested in hearing about doing this. You certainly don't, this is something you can very easily do on your own. I just think it's an important piece that sometimes people forget to do or do out of order and do it maybe later in the game. So without further ado, I want to talk about this, what I consider really a foundational element that frequently will get overlooked, especially in the beginning. And that is how you're prioritizing your time. Many of us, again, jump into setting goals and our budgets and don't realize that's all connected to time itself. And so I really encourage people that I work with, my clients, those entrepreneurs and small business owners, that crucial first step is time. So first, let me explain to you why we're starting with time. And we have to keep in mind that time is finite. And there is time bending and ways we can manipulate time, but we're not going to get into that. For all intents and purposes, we're going to see time as being finite. And we need to be very realistic about the time we have to fulfill goals. Because if you on average have 20 hours a week to work on your business, well, then your goal is going to be different than if you had 40 hours a week on average in your business. So that is why it's really important to first look at time. So, okay, let's do it. So the first thing, there's a couple pieces of time that you need to look at. So we're really prioritizing our time and how we're spending it. And I always recommend starting actually with your personal commitments. So in looking at 2024, and I recommend, grabbing your calendar. And so while you might manage your calendar on your computer, I personally use Google Calendar. A lot of people use a digital calendar, right, to manage all their appointments and schedule everything. I also have a very large, I don't know, it's maybe 4 feet tall and 5 feet wide calendar. That's the whole year that I actually have on a wall in my office. It is undated, so I can use it every year, and I just use dry erase marker on it. So I love having that visual. So whether you're going to put a big annual calendar on the wall or even printing out a, blank calendar pages for each month, I love having something that's more tangible that I can write on, that's more visual. And especially when you're doing this exercise, I strongly recommend it. And in fact, I leave this calendar on my wall all year. I don't put my daily appointments on it, but I do put some of the things we're going to talk about today. So first things first, grab a 2024 calendar or whatever time period you're looking at. And if it's tangible, visual, all the better. So the first thing is map out those personal commitments. So these are things like maybe you already know of a vacation that's coming up or a time period that you want to take vacation, right? For example, in the United States, July 4th, which is a national holiday, and obviously that changes the day of the week that it's on each year. It's a very common time, though, that a lot of people might take more days off or that whole week as a vacation because there's already a holiday attached to it. And it's the summer, which we always like to have a little more vacation in the summer. But so you might not have that vacation plan, but you might be able to say, you know what, I'd love to take that week off. Okay, so anything that or maybe you think that might be a time period that you want to have vacation. Other things to put. Could be family events that you know about. It could be if you have children, it could be their school calendar, right? What days do they have off of school? When does school begin? When does it end? Holidays, right? There are many holidays and we don't all celebrate the same holidays. So what are the holidays that are important for you that you want to block off on your calendar? Maybe it's birthdays. Anything that you already know in advance, block it off. Maybe you say, oh, the end of the year, I like to take the last 2 weeks off of December. Excellent. Block it off. So the first step is just blocking those off on the calendar. The next piece is, okay, what are some business commitments that you have? Maybe you already have committed to going to a conference and you have to travel. Maybe there's other travel or events that you already know are coming up. Either you've committed to them or you're planning to do them, anything like that, go ahead and put it on the calendar. And maybe actually, if there's some you're on the fence about, when you visually are putting everything on the calendar, that might help you decide because you might realize like, oof, that sandwich between a vacation and my kids are off of school, maybe that isn't a great time for me to actually go to this conference. Or maybe you'll realize like, hey, this is perfect. Not much going on this month. I can definitely do that, make that work for me. So it's a great time to pull out those dates, put them on the calendar. Other things that I like to put on is go ahead right now and block off when you're going to do your quarterly planning and reviews. So while I'm a big advocate to do an annual plan, and everyone should do that, for those of you who will do it with me, we take a big look at the whole year, but then really kind of fine-tuning activities and strategies. I really just focus on one 90-day, 12-week period or 1/4 of the year at a time. And I recommend that every quarter throughout the year that you are doing more of that fine tuning, that deeper look at, okay, what happened? And now what are those actions and strategies that I'm going to take in this next quarter? Again, blocking enough time in your calendar to do that. I love to at least take a day. So that's an example of something to block off. Maybe it's even just noting, okay, I know I need to review my financials and I want to do that each month, whatever that is for you. Maybe it's the first Friday of the month, you're reviewing the previous month's financials. Put that on the calendar. Another thing that I'm going to have an episode coming up very soon about this, but this idea of a business owner date, or sometimes you've heard it called a CEO date, which can be planning or financial reviews, or there's other ways to use that time as well. But again, it's kind of blocking off time for activities that are very important to do, but can easily not happen when we get caught up with running our business. So the more we can kind of block out and plan out, and again, it's not set in stone. As I said, my big calendar on the wall, I have dry erase marker, right? So if things change, it can change, but just mapping it out and putting it on there already is increasing chances that it's going to happen. So the last piece I will say, and notice this is a really quick and simple episode, but it's so important, and I really encourage you to do it if you haven't already. But I will say that by doing this, it's probably going to further draw your awareness to how you're spending your time. And this will inevitably help you to make better goals, because when we set a goal, we have to think about capacity, we have to think about resources, and our time and how we're spending our time is so important. All right. Go grab that calendar, start blocking your time. And I want to invite you to join me for my virtual annual planning workshop. And as I said, I have some pre-work, there's some videos, there's a workbook you can dig into right now. But on Friday, December 8th at 10 a.m. Central Time, I will be live hosting a workshop where it's going to be 3 hours. You can come for the whole thing. You can join for whatever piece of that you can, or you don't have to come that day at all, because we're going to have a replay available to you as well. So you can take that video. If there's a better day that works for you, block off a day, block off a morning, block off an afternoon. You'll be able to watch the workshop and do your planning simultaneously. So the workshop is going to be part direction and instruction, and there's also going to be implementation time as we go along. So you can find a link to this strategic planning workshop in the show notes, and I would love to see you there. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Spark Good podcast. If you haven't yet, please subscribe or follow to the podcast and leave a rating and review so more people can listen and find us. Also, let's connect. You can head over to my website at www.sparkgood.net, where you can subscribe to my mail list and set up a time for us to have a virtual coffee chat. Thank you for joining.